don't know whether you remember, you called me the morning after you won the Sobeys. And together with TIFF, the Goethe-Institut was looking for possibly Canadian artists, expats in Berlin that you just started to become, to do a filmic project on the built environment of Berlin. And then that same year, 2011, you submitted a two-pager, which I dug out of our archives, a project proposal. And I just thought, oh, it was like 50 buildings, unbelievable, specific, expensive camera equipment. I was just like, they're not going to pull this off. And then immediately after, of course, I thought, oh, no, wait a second, it's Dan and Christian. You just, you took me to Oakville Galleries to see Infrastructure Canada. It's like, okay, they just conquered, what did you drive, 8,000 miles through Canada?
Like 55,000.
Yeah, so something even more insane. And so I thought, well, what if? And frankly, that's how our involvement also at the Goethe started, with that what if. And it became nearly this dare. There was waiting to see whether the seed money that we put in and the support that we put in would, you know, come to fruition and end up in something. And I would say you won the dare, if not before, then certainly today with the book launch here. But also, there are decided differences in those two, in that time span. The project proposal that you probably still remember, and then what we ended up with through various incarnations, the show at TIFF, which was a 35mm film installation, also in tandem with Tessida Dean and in dialogue with Tessida Dean, and then of course this book here. And I just wanted to trigger that and start you off, and there'll be a bit of show and tell as well about what happened between 2011 and 2018.
Making the Every Building film, and also making Infrastructure Canada, we had the luxury of working with Canadian bureaucracies that were extremely helpful and friendly. You call them, and they might give you a nice spreadsheet of everything you asked for. And in Germany, they just say like, nie, nein, nicht. And if you can force them into giving you something, they might actually charge you a lot of money for it. And the data might actually be bad as well. So luckily we had very friendly colleagues that helped us hack together a system. One was we got all the planning maps from 2012 and the planning maps from 2013, and we overlaid them to find the new construction. And for the 30 years earlier, we took the aerial photography from 1979 and 1984, and overlaid them to find the differences in West Berlin and East Berlin. We had aerial photography from 83, and from, I don't know, when was it? No, and then we had planning maps. So the reason why in the title of the work we have the 83 crossed out is because we're not able to precisely
pinpoint the exact dates.
Yes, so we were able to shoot every new building built in Berlin that was on one of these planning maps, as long as someone didn't come out and say, please don't take a photograph. And then we took one building, we took a picture of one building built roughly 30 years earlier. So we wanted to have two complete tracks, but we were unable to do so, so instead we had one complete track for the recent construction and a reference photo. And that was sort of the best we could do. So the Berlin Wall kind of goes like, you know, something like that. And so we start at the northwest and we travel east, and then once we hit the end of the city, we travel west, and so we travel east. So it's like we're slicing the city up. And then, so you kind of, and okay, the city is broken down into these, in the 20s it was broken down into these district maps. There was 154 of them. And so these became the photographer worksheets, and we started in 2015 in February, and we ended in May that year. And we had 2 architectural cameras, and we worked in shifts full time to shoot. So we shot for, I don't know, 3.5 months. It's kind of, the Germans didn't believe that we did this project. They're like, no way you did it. So, and we didn't quite realize, we were on tight production schedule to show it, the Laurel at TIFF. And we didn't really quite realize what we were going to make until we ended up in the middle of it. So, and also, it wasn't that much fun because the people around us were not very friendly, and they were like thinking like they wanted to see our documents, thought we were spies, they thought we were doing research for Polish gangs. So it wasn't that much fun versus doing things in Canada. Everyone's really nice.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly in my days and weeks of traveling through the suburbs of Berlin, I can support what Dan has said about the almost hostile reception of strangers in the suburbs. I mean, I don't think anybody actually called the police because I was taking photographs, but it came close a couple of times, and I would just explain myself that I'm a Canadian architect. That didn't matter to people. And, there is, I mean, Google Earth in Berlin allows people to block out all images of their buildings. So I, of course, at the same time that I was trying to re-experience some of what Dan and Christian had been through, I was pursuing my own research projects on early modern architecture, on courtyard houses, and it was extremely difficult to do because of that. I'd find something from satellite imagery, and the ground level view would be completely blocked by people that had requested their privacy, and understandably, but also at a level that I think reflects this kind of great unease about dwelling overall.
Maybe but also about data collection.
But data
I experienced
collection.
that here after 20 years, like if there's a census, Canadians jump up with joy because, I mean, wow, if there's data that'll help us make better schools, better roads, better, find out how many supermarkets we need for the 60,000 people moving in at Bloor-Dufferin in 10 years. In Germany, it's like major protest, boycott, legal action. You do not want the data taken further. I don't need to explain why, obviously.
The project could also just be looked at as a pure experiment and as a research question. And that this is like a technical object or an epistemological outcome of this scientific experiment. What is 1 year reconstruction and what did it look like 30 years? Was this just a battle? And we took that approach actually to the color correction as well, where we used, everyone involved in making a book knows about these color correction debates. It's like you over-neutralize things or try to make things look natural. So we made all these Photoshop scripts that kind of correct for the issues in the press. We did 5 wet proofs. But still, we wanted to really show what the scene looks like in terms of the actual light. So we would be working with the color correction people, sending these scripts in Photoshop, and we'd go outside and we'd be like, hey, look at that building out there. It looks like it's a little bit too green, right? So we worked really hard.
And then I say it's an index, but it doesn't have page numbers, it doesn't have captions, the images don't have titles. To me, that's the big dare, and as you go through, and that's why often somebody said it as we opened it. Oh, it's like a flip book, because you and I sat together, and immediately you tend to hold it, of course, this way, or you tend to flip through it. In your essay, and maybe I'm skewing it a bit, you're mentioning, because you're referring to the filming process as having a defamiliarizing effect. Mm-hmm. And when I read it, I was like, actually, to me it's nearly the opposite. It's nearly a familiarizing effect, because the lack of contextual data, also this is a sound-based installation, this is on the page as we see it, there's no other information than visual information. The audience can't be sloppy or lazy. Like your brain immediately goes into sort of explanatory mode. I don't want to say narrative or storytelling mode, but it goes into looking for juxtapositions, looking for lines, looking for angles. That's how our brains work, right? And I love that because to me it had more of a familiarizing effect because of course, you know, I know some of this. It's my hometown, so to speak. My family has lived there for hundreds of years. And immediately I go, okay, where is that? We talked about the one little dog that we saw yesterday that I hadn't seen, although I had looked at every single image in the manuscript that you'd given me. So
Yeah,
maybe it's both, maybe it's
yeah,
personal.
I think it's both. I mean, familiarizing and defamiliarizing. I mean, I made a comment at one point that this is an autonomous artwork. It wasn't, but it feels like it could be used like as a visual primer for people arriving in Germany. This is what it looks like. And that would be like a familiarizing function of the work.
Yeah.
But from the point of view of these well-established narratives in urban discussions, it's defamiliarizing. It's exactly like Freud's discussion of the conversion of the Heimlich to the Unheimlich. That they, you know, the uncanny, the kenny and the uncanny, something that you know so familiar that it becomes odd when you look at it from a new perspective or with a new intensity. And I think the work, well, it doesn't bear any of the other sort of signifiers from the art world of work that tries to attain that status. It arrives at it through a kind of objective, almost scientific procedure that, yeah, it's familiar. This is the everyday spaces of the city, but at the same time it defamiliarizes all of the crude narratives that are, you know,
Yeah, it's
constantly
it's anti-narrative artwork.
Yeah.
And that makes it kind of difficult to narrativize. I mean, I said this, and Lynn, the editor, who's described it as an imaging machine to destroy the established image of the city. And
that reminds me, sorry, of the Taz Berlin newspaper ran a positive review, a friendly review, and I have to put that in because the title was "A Pension for the Ugly. This video piece might disappoint Berliners." And while the word disappoint has been used also in friendly ways by English language critics vis-a-vis your work, what is important here, I'm going into a little linguistic discourse, is that the original German word was enttäuschen. And täuschen is to deceive, literally, if you look at this, it means disappoint, but täuschen is to deceive somebody, so enttäuschen, and that's what they meant, is to undeceive Berliners. So, I mean, it goes into what you just said also, but unheimlich and defamiliarization. So is that, I mean, your works maybe are, yes, nearly deceptively simple, uncommented, and anti-narrative, but is it planned as a deception?
No, but
But do you realize that it can have that effect?
No, we worked so hard to make sure that this was an actual representation. It's just, we wanted your brain to work, and it's about, I mean, it's very romantic in terms of how images work and the possibility of looking at things, and the possibility of us able to capture the city we can. But one thing I wanted to say was, yes, there's no page numbers, and there's no index, and lots of people complain about it. I think it's also, the project is almost for like this Berlin architectural city cult, where you actually do have to try to figure out where you are, and there are all these little clues in terms of the different urban realm, and because there's so many different characteristics regarding the streetlights and signposts. But there is instructions of what it is specifically that you're looking at, and how we go through the city, and then there's this map in the back of how it's cut up, and yeah, it's supposed to be it's a journey of the city that you could never otherwise have, right? It's like it's a joy of being in the car and looking out the window.
I'm kind of waiting for commentary there from the side on the suburbs and the periphery in the center. Anything or any questions that I want to
I just have one comment. Two comments. The privacy thing has nothing to do with the built environment. It has nothing to do with the houses. The privacy is only about fascism. It's only about that. And in East Germany, it's about that system. People have no interest in their built environment as being photographed. They have interest in the state not nosing around in that. And in fact, the last social movement that I was part of before I emigrated to North America was in 1987. You're absolutely right. When they introduced the census in Germany, we were up in arms. There was almost like a revolt over this. We had meetings in every village, in every town, and there were people. It was cross-generational. And when I then moved to the United States and was a PhD student, my happy geography and sociology colleagues were so happy, as you said, about the census. I said, you fools, this is just like you're delivering all this information to the state. It took me like 30 years to understand that people here have completely different understanding of the state. And in Germany, this is all about that. It has nothing to do with the built environment. So that's just a comment. But the other thing that I wanted to say is that the thing also, which I really is important, and I think this is what Torontonians can learn from this idea of the house, and I'm glad you brought that up and made it such an important topic. And it is, so clearly shown here in these images, is that the house in the German imagination has a much bigger place than it has in the statistic reality. So every German thinks they have a home, or they have there is this idea of a home, there is this idea of that being linked to German identity. Mm-hmm. But in Berlin, that is slightly different.
Yes.
And that is really a very good observation, because if you grow up anywhere else in Germany, if you live anywhere else in Germany, the house has a different meaning. And in Berlin, it's so out. It's a percentage of 85% of people in rental. Means that I just had a few conversations with Berliners at a conference about that topic. They can't even understand that I live in the city where the house is the majority, and that city where property of houses is dominant in the imagination. And I'm saying that because I think the Torontonians need to learn that it can also be the other way around.
Yes,
and that here we're suffering so terribly from the Yellow Belt and the mindset of, people know what the Yellow Belt is the big swath of land, the 75 or 80% of land in Toronto that is covered by single-family homes, which is entirely untouchable by development. It's completely sanctified in this idea of private property. And if we Torontonians learn a little bit from the Berliners, and if the Berliners learn a little bit from the rest of the world, I think we could both learn. And I think that I'm very happy that you made that statement about that.
One of my side projects when I was in